If you want to live an extraordinary life, we need to have a simple mind and live a simple life based on one simple focus, your life purpose.
Hey, welcome back to the Men of Iron podcast. Today we have a special episode. We are sitting with the author of Inner Excellence, Jim Murphy. We are thrilled to have him here with us today. And so we're just going to dig into some of the big stories from his life, some of the things that he's written about in his book, and of course, how it applies specifically to the guys in our audience. So Jim, thanks for being on the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I'd love to dive into, I feel like there's a little bit about it in the book, but I just want to hear a lot more about it from you. You have this incredible life experience where you're playing baseball, and then something happens in your life and you find yourself out in the desert, and that desert experience kind of, I think, sets off this whole other direction. Maybe you define that differently, but I'd love to hear a little bit about that from you.
My whole life, since I was 7 or 8 years old, was this dream to be a professional athlete, whether it was in the NBA, Major League Baseball, or NFL. And so getting drafted by the Chicago Cubs was a dream come true. And then I got injured. I played for 5 years in the minor leagues and got injured and had to retire. And I was devastated. I was a young man in my 20s and with really this loss of hope and direction in my life. And I got asked to coach a high school baseball team in inner city Seattle. I was driving a truck for FedEx. And I never considered it, never thought I could offer anything. We went undefeated and had the best time. I was like, okay, so now obviously we know the truth. My destiny was not to be a superstar Major League Baseball player. It was to be a superstar Major League manager, win the World Series, coach the Yankees, etc. So I ended up enrolling in grad school at the University of British Columbia to study coaching science so I could get a master's degree. I did my master's paper on how to build a championship team, and I sent this snail mail letter, the kind of the stamp in an envelope, to every major league team, every GM and every field manager, saying, I'm studying how to build a championship team. I'd like to interview you in person, with the reasoning that once they get to know me in person, see what I'm doing, and then I'm going to come back and ask for a job after I graduate, and which is exactly what I did. And I got a job with the Texas Rangers 2 weeks after graduation. And then I quit 6 months later in tears. After going to grad school, all just to get this job. Yeah, it was a really tough time in my life. And it just wasn't a good fit. And I realized at the time, I thought, I just failed. I don't know. I'm just a loser. I just felt really low. Like, how can I not make this work? I just can't believe I can't make this work. I did not know that God had far bigger plans for me. And it was a box that I wasn't meant to fit in. God is always at work, and most of the time I haven't recognized it. Looking back after everything that's happened, especially in the last 6 months, it's so extraordinary to see, oh my gosh, that was training, all that was training for my life right now. I had no idea that was happening this whole time. And then I get a call from Major League Baseball asking if I was interested in being the hitting coach for the South African national baseball team for their Olympic trials. The Olympic trials was against Guam. Baseball was their national sport, and our sport, guys were pitching off no mounds. Like, a lot of the fields had no mound. It was just flat with brown baseballs. It was just, they had a lot they're up against. So we win the Olympic trials, and we go to the Sydney 2000 Olympics, and we have one of the biggest upset victories in Olympic baseball history. So after the Olympics, what do I do now? I always thought you're destined for something extraordinary. What are you going to do? And I had nothing to do, and kind of burned the bridge of pro baseball. So what am I going to do next? I get a call from my former teammate in pro baseball, Ricky Scruggs, who was in Arizona. And he said, can you come down and help me open up this baseball academy, center field baseball academy? And so I decided to move down there, give away over half my possessions, including my TV, this is before streaming, to live a life of solitude and figure out something that I could devote my life to, something that I was willing to live and die for. I think what kind of captures that time for me was one of my first New Year's, either my first or second New Year's there. I'm in this empty house. I hear a noise. I go outside and I see fireworks. And that was the first time I knew that it was New Year's Eve. I didn't know what day it was, because trying to live a life of solitude, I was really not dating and I wanted to find out what am I meant to, why am I on this earth? What am I meant to do with my life? And so it was a lonely time. But that's where I decided to become a personal coach to pro baseball players and teach them how to have peace and confidence under pressure. And when my first two athletes did extraordinary, then I was like, okay, we've got something here. Let's put together a little manual on how to do this. So I call up a sports psychologist and I ask him, how can a Major League Baseball player, Game 7 of the World Series, bottom of the ninth, full count, bases loaded, 2 outs, down by 1, how can that guy have peace and confidence with so much out of his control? And isn't that so much like our lives now? There's so much out of our control and so much fear and anxiety and what's going on with the world. And I think to have peace and confidence today in many ways is harder for the working class person that may have 2 jobs and kids at home, much harder than a pro athlete. And I spent 5 years of full-time writing and researching that question, and that's where Inner Excellence was born.
Okay. That's incredible. I can see guys listening to this podcast thinking like, well, I'm not a baseball player. I'm not a swimmer, but they are in that category of, man, I'm working 2 jobs. I'm trying to support my family. I'm trying to be the best dad I can possibly be. What are the parallels there that you've identified, that you've seen?
The common thread is that there's so much out of your control. So how can you have this peace and confidence when there's so much out of your control? And what I realized is in the desert is several things. One is that the heart is the key to your life. When I say heart, I mean your spirit, your will, your soul, the deepest part of you. It's where your greatest fears are and your greatest dreams are. And it's your subconscious and your heart is what's running your life. And that's why we need to guard it, because whatever you do, think, say, is coming from your heart. That's why it needs training. So Inner Excellence is about heart transformation. And I realized that there's no sense in me helping someone become world number 1 or win a gold medal or do anything, have some great success if it's not meaningful. What good is it to have $1 million and live a life of anxiety and fear, for example, or you don't do anything that benefits the world? And so I didn't go to the desert to live a life of solitude to figure out something where I could just make people rich or give them trophies. In the research, when I realized that the key to having the most peace and confidence when your life has the most pressure, it's the same path, the same characteristics as living the best possible life. A life of deep contentment, joy, and confidence. A life filled with love, joy, and peace. It's the same training and it's the same path. When I realized that changed everything for me.
It's so easy for us to be focused on outcomes and like, I'm going to do this because I'm going to get there. And I'm going to work really hard for this so that eventually I'll get that promotion or I'll get that raise or whatever. And one of the things I appreciate about the book and just your thoughts through the book is that actually it's what you're already saying. It's that inner transformation that really brings you the peace that you're looking for. Because, I mean, you get that raise, you get that promotion, you're going to be focused on the next thing almost immediately. And so like with Inner Excellence, I just appreciate so much that it's really that inner transformation that you're looking for. Ultimately, we want to see guys have a meaningful relationship with God so that they can know God and know their purpose and find fulfillment ultimately in that you're walking in the life that God has destined for you to be a part of. And usually that's not tied to the outcomes at all. One of the things you highlighted, and I've really resonated with it, is these mindsets that you can fall into. So it's the trickster, the critic, and the monkey mind. Can you talk about that some? Because I appreciated that so much. It's been really helpful to me in my day-to-day life.
When you think about yourself, you're going to get reminded of your weaknesses and failures. And so then you're going to feel bad. So you're going to want to feel better. So how do I feel better? Well, if I can at least compare myself, at least I'm better than that guy. Well, but then there's always someone who has more better things than you. So then this comparison turns into either envy or judgment or anxiety or generally all three, and leads towards fear. Within that process of self-centeredness leading towards fear, 3 things come up. And that is the 3 great challenges: overthinking and negative thinking and self-consciousness. And so now we have the monkey mind, the critic, and the trickster. So the monkey mind is that part of our mind that, it's this anxious mind that has way too many thoughts from way too many concerns. And then the negative thinking or judgmental thinking, these are the 3 biggest challenges in performance and in life. And when we think negative or especially judgmentally, that you lose creativity, takes you out of your flow, you lose, your vision narrows, you lose curiosity when you judge. So the solution is to use discernment, to have discernment in what to do, and rather than judgment. And discernment is to use wisdom to figure out the best course of action. And then the third one, self-consciousness. When a pro athlete comes to me and wants to perform better, I found one of the biggest, most common things lacking in their lives, and it's not just pro athletes, is freedom. Lack of freedom to play like a kid, to have fun in their work, and just to have this sense of playfulness and joy. It's linked to the willingness to make mistakes, to fail, to look foolish, to, all those things. And as adults, because our greatest need is for unconditional love, and our greatest fear is not to get that love. And so fear of failure becomes a really big thing, because if we fail, then we could lose that love. And so our biggest fear could come true. So then human nature is to get tentative and anxious. Like, what if I fail? And what if this doesn't work? And now you got a world with so much out of your control and so much chaos. Now we've got 10 times the anxiety.
So ultimately, when you just rest in the perfect love that is being known and appreciated, knowing God and knowing your purpose, you find like this release of all those tensions. And you can rest in that and not be rewarded by your performance, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's an endless chase your tail treadmill. That's not going to work. It's going to leave you empty.
One of the things you highlighted, I think there's a whole chapter about like the samurai mindset, and I really resonated with like just living a life without a fear of death, knowing like, hey, everyone's going to die, and you can't change it. Which is kind of a scandalous thing to have a conversation about. Like, people don't like to sit around talking about death all day. But I just appreciate how you engaged it, and how it really does, like when we change our mindset there, it frees us up to actually pursue our purpose. Can you touch on that some?
If you love your life, if you live a self-centered human nature life, you'll lose it. But if you surrender your life, if you give up your life for others, you'll gain it. And so one of the things that I always try to do is, at any given moment, to live in such a way that I'm always ready to fully live or give up my life, my physical life. It's to know who God is, and therefore who you are, what he's doing in the world, and how you can join in. It's also the unobstructed view of beauty, connections, and opportunities. And because that's the selfless and therefore fearless life of peace and joy that I want to live, and I think that we're created for.
I'm thinking, like, guys listening, like if I'm working a job, I'm a VP, I work in an office, something like that. I have any number of tasks that are on my plate any day. How do I even go about starting trying to live this way? Because I have a meeting at 10, then I have another meeting at 1. I barely even have time to think about living this way. How do you start to embrace this life of inner excellence?
Well, the first thing I would say is one of the biggest challenges that people have is they're super, super busy. Human nature is I just want to get more achievements and more money and more status. I want to, climb the corporate ladder or whatever it is, get a better job. And I'm too busy to think about these deeper things. But the problem is, one, you could die tomorrow. And two, I used to think that I would hurry to reduce my stress. And then I realized hurry was the cause of my stress. I had a hurry sickness. It's kind of similar to what I talk about in the book, the affluenza virus of the heart. This sickness where you're just need more achievements, more possessions, and this consumeristic transactional life that I've lived for much of my life. And I just want people to know there's a far, far better way to live.
Living for real purpose.
Yeah, absolute fullness of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy how you can live so much of your life for the wrong thing. and how much more rewarding it is to actually live for true purpose and truly living. And so that's one of the things that we want to encourage men to do all the time is invite men into a life that is rewarding, that is driven by your real purpose and not driven by whatever the next position you're going to get with, a bigger TV and a faster car. It's like none of those things will be ultimately fulfilling at all. And they're just tricks along the way.
That's right.
Talk to me about, you told me a little bit about some of your projects that are coming up, focused on living the best possible life. Tell me a little bit about that.
About the book, The Best Possible Life?
Yeah.
I wrote another book that came out last November. It's going to get republished by Hachette Books in February, called The Best Possible Life, How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence No Matter What. And this book is on the spiritual life. It's kind of a summary of inner excellence written for the person who doesn't love to read. Mm-hmm. So it's a small, short, much shorter, but it gets at the heart of it. What is inner excellence really about? What is the essence of inner excellence? Because inner excellence, the start of it was a book on mental toughness and performance for athletes. And as I did the research, I realized, it's not just for athletes, it's for all of us. And so The Best Possible Life is a book on continuing on what is the power behind inner excellence.
So what is that? What is the power there?
Well, it's understanding that the best possible life is a spirit-led life. The heart is the most important part of you. And so how do we train the heart? So this was the question that I faced in the desert when I realized your heart, your spirit is the most important part of you. And that's what needs training. But that's far too limited if you're just training the mind.
Yeah.
Because we need to get to your greatest fears and your greatest dreams and hopes and what's running your life, which is what you love most and fear most. And that training that heart for heart transformation, that's where the real power is. The best possible life walks by faith, not by sight. And it has one foot in joy and one foot in suffering. If you want to live an extraordinary life, you have to do hard things, and you have to learn to sacrifice. And just look at, if you want to be physically strong, there's no way to do it without breaking down.
Yeah.
You have to go through that sacrifice suffering in order to do it. You have to sacrifice time, energy, and go through that pain of breaking the muscle down. It's the same thing for if you want wisdom, if you want courage, if you want a life of deep contentment, joy, and confidence. It's not, if you read The Best Possible Life, it's not just the physical aspect. In fact, that's the smallest part. The most important part is to understand that the most powerful people are the people that are willing to surrender.
It's interesting. So much of us can be tempted to try to avoid suffering at all costs, but so often we learn so much and we grow in incredible amounts through that suffering. I bet guys that are listening can even look back on their own lives and see painful points in their lives that they actually became thankful for. And so when we live not afraid of suffering, we actually, I think, a lot of times grow even more because we're not afraid to face those things. We're not trying to consistently avoid those things, just live in comfort. It's just an incredibly powerful force. So I'm just encouraged to hear that that's the best possible way to live, to really pursue a heart-centered life that's not driven by all these external circumstances. Yeah. I appreciate your time, Jim. I think the book, Inner Excellence, is just an incredible read. I think it's helpful to anybody in any circumstance. I definitely came into it thinking, I'm not trying to be a Major League Baseball player. I don't know what this is going to do for me. And it's helped me so much in my mindset and just how I choose to walk my every day, how I start my day and stop my day. So it's been very valuable to me. I know it'll be really valuable to guys in our audience. Anything you want to leave with our audience before you take off?
Like if your life is really hard right now, there's training that's going on that you likely can't see. And the world really needs hope. And what the world needs is people to be their true selves, where they surrender to a power greater than themselves. And when you surrender, then anything is possible.
That's fantastic. And that's what we encourage the guys in our audience to do all the time. You'll find true purpose when you're committing your life to following God and honoring him with your life and honoring him with your decisions. It doesn't always look like the flashy life. It doesn't always look like, what society says you need, but it is the most fulfilling place a man can possibly be when he's knowing God, knowing his purpose, and walking in the plan that God's laid out for him. So, Jim, thanks so much for being on the podcast, man. I appreciate your time and appreciate your message.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Men of Iron podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. At Men of Iron, we exist to change a culture one man at a time, and we'd love to have you partner with us. So go to menofiron.org to see how you can get involved, or donate at menofiron.org/donate.